next up will be our final panel for the day on how partnerships can contribute to an optimal payment experience. I'm not going to introduce everyone. I'll leave that to Jess and team. But yeah, let's take it away.
Cool. Thank you, Tarek. Awesome. As Tarek mentioned, welcome to the final panel of the day. It's also past 3 p.m. on a Friday in Cape Town, so we got the graveyard shift. Thank you all for being here. I'm sorry there are no drinks while we do this. But to introduce myself, I lead channel partnerships at Stitch. I form part of the business development team, and I'm involved with all our new and existing partners, many of which are here today and also joining us on the panel. So a pleasure to be here. Quick question, do a bit of an intro before I introduce my panel members. But can you please raise your hand if you think you're involved with partnerships in your day-to-day job? Okay. No, that's a good thing. See, that question was working well for me, because if you all answered like you did, then that's exactly what I was hoping to hear. And if you didn't, I was going to use the whole panel to prove to you that you are actually involved in partnerships at the end. Another thing that's worked out really well for me today is when Mark did the keynote, Mark from MasterCard, he started off with, and I quote, "Partnerships are ever critical." So he basically said my intro for me, and I'll leave it at that. Yeah, pretty much. This is the keynote for the day. But I think let's hand over to the team members, if you can all go through, give your name, your company, and also the role that you play. Normally, it would be ladies first, but I'm very proud to say that there are 4 of us on the panel today. So Louis, men first. Off you go.
Okay, yeah, there we go. Hi, Louis. So I'm from Luno, if the t-shirt doesn't give it away already. And I look after Luno's acquisition funnel. So that's basically anything from bringing customers in through top of funnel distribution partnerships to onboarding, verifying identities, and then also to payments. So getting your actual crypto into your wallet for the first time.
Hi, everyone. I'm Neha. I work at Stitch on product partnerships. So the other side of what partnerships does at Stitch around engaging with various stakeholders that allows us to be able to make progress on our product roadmap. We're very much firm believers of you don't have to build everything yourself. If there are people out there doing it better than you are, how do you leverage it to bring capabilities to market?
Hi, my name is Alice. I am with Yellow Card Financial. We have a counterpart here, so you can pick and choose where you want to buy your crypto. So I don't know. I don't know if there's a job definition in a startup world. I do everything, but I've been hired to handle finance, but pretty much we do everything.
Hi everyone, my name is Clarissa. I work at Peach Payments. I've been at Peach for the last year. Just a little bit about Peach. For about 8 years, we were 25 people, and now in year 11, we're 125 people. So partnerships have become really important for us, and it's a brand new team as well. We look after payment partners, so the likes of Stitch as an example, platform partners, your Shopify, your Wix, developer agencies, and it's ever growing. Our sales team's always bringing us partner leads. Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. So I think to kick off, the one thing about partnerships and in preparation for this panel, I think all 5 of us can agree that we thought 45 minutes is either too short or it's too long, because we can dive into this for days. An important thing is that when you look at partnerships, we've got 5 very, very different roles here and 5 very different focus areas, and they all come together to contribute to what we're all here to do: give our customers an easy and seamless and enjoyable way to check out and to pay. What I wanted to start off with is, Clarissa, you mentioned obviously a bit about Peach. And generally, when you look at partnerships, that's something that you have been successfully been able to do as a Peach member. It's been around for 13 years, but your role, I believe, was actually only formed last year. So can you tell me a bit about that, like why there was maybe the delay, and in the last year, what you've done to kind of re-strategize and change the way that partnerships is viewed at Peach?
Yeah, I think I was really fortunate. Our co-founder and CEO, Rahul, was kind of running all the partnerships. Our sales team was working with merchants, which is what sales is doing, also doing partnerships. And I'm sure for many of us, it's kind of a blended thing, exactly like you're in finance, but you're doing partnerships as well. When I joined Peach, we just worked on a payments API, and our goal was to bring on more payment partners, and Stitch was one of them. So yeah, that was really a focus for us. We brought on, I think, 5 or 6 payment partners this year, and next year we'll be focusing on different verticals of partnerships and also growing our partnerships team, which I think is kind of like a really great way to do it. Like bring one person in, see how it works, and then you can start building out the team from there.
Perfect. And did you find in your evaluation when you started that there was partnerships that weren't necessarily being run optimally? I think we've had a few discussions around what makes a successful partner, and how to obviously leverage the most of each other. Was that the case, or was it more just refining?
Yeah, I think it was a mix. Like there were partnerships that were maybe a bit cold just because there weren't people able to work on them, or the initial, I mean, partnerships are between humans. So the initial humans that had made the partnership and set up the relationship had since left, so you don't know who you're working with. Also, sometimes it's like totally random. I mean, Andrew and I worked together in a previous life, and I think that helped a lot to bring on the Stitch and Peach partnership, even though I think we took a long time to sign the contract. But so it's kind of, I mean, you can see everyone here has got like 2 or 3 degrees of separation, and I think that also helps like build and set up partnerships.
Yeah, I think you touched on the human interaction there, which is so important. Neha, over to you. I mean, similar to Clarissa in terms of forming it, you've also pioneered your role in the Stitch evolution, and we've spoken a lot about that you're basically like an internal and external stakeholder management, given your role in the product world. Could you give us a bit of indication of how your roles evolved at Stitch?
Yeah. And actually, the exciting thing for me is as we grow as a company, I get more internal stakeholders to work with. As our legal team has come on board, as our finance team has come on board, as our channel partnerships team has come on board, it's meant that there are more and more people who are engaging and thinking about our product roadmap and our strategic vision and what are we trying to do, how does that align with our clients' priorities. So even though partnerships is just my job, but everybody at Stitch is thinking about it from their perspective, and then I get to be the person who takes their perspectives, puts it all together, and goes out and tries to find the right partner that matches all of those criterias. So that's the internal side on the stakeholder, and then on the external side, it's the whole gamut, right? It's you're trying to find people that are mission aligned with you, like why are they in this business? What are they trying to achieve? You're trying to find product capabilities that, from a Stitch perspective, are aligned from a technical point of view, right? We're developer first, so while I'm not the technical person in the room, I'm very clear that whoever we partner with has to bring that same technical knowledge, that same technical approach as we do in our work. So then when you're engaging with external stakeholders, you've kind of got these list of things. That makes my job really easy because I know all of those things internally, and I just have to then find people who match it.
Sure. And a lot of your work from an external perspective is dealing with the historical and established financial institutions. I know that we have quite a few of them in the office today, or at least at the summit. And I think there's often a disconnect between them being barriers, perhaps, and a lot of people can have that opinion. But I think what's most important is managing the speed that we want to move, being like an evolving, both in an industry and obviously, especially with Stitch, I suppose, and then in the crypto side as well. How do you manage that internally and externally with respect to what we're able to do versus what we want to do and how quickly?
If I had the answer, I would be really rich and retired by now. I think it's a combination of things. I think it's back to what Clarissa said around partnerships are all about people. Actually, we can talk about the product capabilities, we can talk about finance, we can talk about payments, but at the end of the day, the person across from me is also another human being, and they've got their own priorities, and you're trying to find common ground. Whether I'm trying to find that common ground with a large financial institution or a banking institution, or whether I'm trying to find that common ground with a crypto partner, you do have to keep in mind what is their perspective, what are they trying to achieve, and where are the common areas. We're not the same, right? We're not going to achieve exactly the same thing, but if we find the common areas in which we can work together, then let's focus on that, because we can spend all our time thinking about how we're different, how one is better than the other, but that doesn't move the needle. So my approach rather is, I want to find what's common between me and the person who's working at a bank, or me and the person who's working at a retailer, or me and a person who's working at a third-party provider, like a fraud provider or AML provider, and find that common ground and go from there.
Sure, thanks. And that kind of leads me to when you're looking into emerging markets. So we've got, both Yellow Card and Luno in multiple markets. Louis, I know Luno's in over 40 markets at the moment, which is huge. When you are looking at expanding into a new market, what's the Luno strategy there? Is that a go first and see what Luno can do, or is it a partner first strategy? And if it is a partner first strategy, what do you look for? What's the strategy there?
I think it's very interesting with new markets, especially if you look at how we approached Africa in the last few years. We went into markets where there wasn't a actual fintech association or industry body, and there wasn't regulation either, especially for crypto. So you come into a place where there's in some cases as well, no liquidity as well, which is makes it even more difficult to get buyers and sellers for crypto and get decent prices. What we found, especially in the emerging markets, is we look for people who can help us get in front of banks, get in front of payment providers, because again, if there's no industry body, we can't do that through a fintech association like FINASA that was recently formed here. We'd basically go to law firms, for example, and say, okay, you've got relationships with big banks here. How can we get in front of them? How can we do presentations and show them how our compliance works and our KYC, money laundering protection, those kinds of things? So that's really important. In terms of what we look for in partners, it's a lot of things that were touched on already, I think, throughout the sessions and in your chat earlier, is someone can do something better than us, or they've got economies of scale in banking. For example, we want customers to be able to buy with cards, but we can't store cardholder information. We're not PCI DSS compliant, so we don't intend to spend our time on that. So we'll get someone else to do it for us because they're already way better and faster than us. We're not going to create our own instant transfer method just because we rather want to cultivate or curate a great crypto and buy experience with that. So that's our speciality. And very much like you said as well, mutual common interests as well. We like to work with partners who understand crypto. Sometimes in some regions it's great if they already know how crypto works, because they can really help us improve our auth rates, for example, in card transactions. And in other cases, it's really great to work with an up-and-coming, fast-moving fintech because we're both informing each other's roadmaps. And so it's both using knowledge, but also really building a product together and building a future together.
Okay, awesome. Alice?
Yeah, actually, I was interested in the question you asked, Neha, around partnerships with banks and I guess, for lack of better words, the incumbents. And I'm not the first to say this. I think Brian Armstrong at Coinbase has said this before, and I always say this everywhere I go. It's like we don't have a choice, right? And they don't have a choice either. They may be slower to the party because they're sitting on a long history and a nice customer base, but we both don't have a choice because that's what customers want. I think the global crypto user population is 320 million. In Africa, we're 50 million. Subscriber base, telco, 450 million. MTN has 270 million. All these numbers are huge, right? And us in the crypto space, for us to really hit critical mass and adoption, and the same for banks and telcos, right? For them to really serve what their customers are asking for, we have to collaborate, we have to partner. And we have to obviously, to his point, have understanding of what the regulators are after and work with regulators. There's such a thing as investor protection. Nobody loves crypto winter, right? Anyone who lost their money, crypto winter, I'm sorry, and people lost their jobs, people lost their savings, right? So we have to understand that perspective as well. So for us, at least, it's essential for us to work with telco subscriber, with the telcos, with the big banks, and we're patient. NetBank is in here. We haven't spoken to Capitec yet. I'm willing to spend 2 years to build that relationship because it's critical for our longevity. It's critical to show the right messaging to regulators. Nothing is ever a quick fix, right? So I think when we talk of partnerships, that's really at the core of what does the customer want, and do we want to be around long term, and how do we get there, right?
Yeah, not really about who gets there, it's who gets there properly and who can stay the longest. And with the ever-changing regulations, or I suppose there being not that many regulations, how does that inform when you're working with partners? Whether that be on like the longevity of it, like how agile are those strategies?
Unofficially, and John, you may get to me at this, but we are the first and only company in Africa that has received a virtual asset license. We're going to put it out in the news next week, but you get a sneak peek. Things like that are important, right? So we got our license in Botswana, which is amazing. So I think it's important when we have conversations with other regulators to signal that, one, we are compliance first driven. We want to be around for a long time, and we want to work with them to figure out what that framework looks like, work with others in the industry. If we have to participate in a working group in a big bank to help them educate and understand, you don't have to tell anyone you're working with Yellow Card, right? Because I think for us, it's just, we want to educate, we want to work with you, understand your perspective, understand our perspective and our processes. But I think things like, we are pursuing licensing, we care about it, we want to work with you. I think it signals to other regulators in other countries that it's important to us and it's something we want to do.
Sure. And I think another important thing is back to payments, and to an extent is when you are going into these different markets, is how do you localize that? I think, Louis, you mentioned that the other day. When you are doing that, given the different markets, are you looking at do we give as multiple options as possible? And I suppose anyone in the panel can actually answer this. I'll leave that to the floor. We had an interesting conversation in an earlier panel around how many payment options that the variety of people have. And whether do we look at what consumers want and we go and we just get every payment method and we manage those, which I think can be quite difficult. Now you've got not 10 people that you have a strong relationship with, you've maybe got 10 teams from different companies. Or do you look at really investing in a single or a couple payment methods that really work, and then you harvest those partnerships across the board, and let's say there's no limitation in terms of what you can use. Like, what is your take on that?
Okay, everyone's looking at me. So I think if anybody's looked at our app before, we don't offer about 12, 13 payment methods per market. I think sometimes it's because of choice. Sometimes we just don't have the option given the markets we're operating in, lack of regulation, lack of trust. I think one of the biggest things we try to do at Luno is localize our products. And I mean, people use that term very loosely, but it's really about what does the market want. So are we looking towards e-wallets, like particularly on the East, or do we look at cards which are really prominent, like even nuances like debit card and credit card in the US, for example. It's like you need to understand those things. So it doesn't help us adding so many payment methods that almost confuse customers. We like to kind of put the one that we think is the most trusted and most product market fit for your crypto buy, front and center, and then give you the other options if you want them. And it's very much about, do customers trust these payment methods? So that's also how we build our market base. Is someone's worked really hard to build trust with the market, and they've got great distribution, they've got great flows. A customer's not going to hesitate to check out with that method when they see it on our app.
You mentioned earlier, like making it really easy and then making the others really difficult and seeing what happens.
Yeah.
Clarissa, that's a bit difficult in your world, given that across your different merchants that you have, and you have so many, not only are you trying to fit them and make them happy, but you almost got an indirect sale where they've got multiple consumers across different target markets, whereas you potentially have to have all the payment methods and all the partners. What is Peach's take on that?
Yeah, I think that's something we realized this year. We were like super excited. We added all these payment methods and we were like, what is our checkout going to look like? This is ridiculous. So things we're thinking of are like, if it's a basket size of, 2,000 Rand, that's a perfect, basket size for like a buy now, pay later, push that through. So trying to make some of those optimizations, figuring those out. Also super different merchants. Some of our merchants don't have enough margin for a buy now, pay later, so we will not force that on them. We would rather suggest an instant EFT where it's much cheaper, they get the right recon. So it's something we're still working with. Also again with regulation, what's happening with open banking, RPP, are we going to have a payment method for every single bank now? We don't know, so we're just going to have to try to be flexible and figure it out as the year progresses.
Sure. And when we talk about an optimal payments experience, yes, we can talk about the different payment methods, but something else, and you alluded to it now, Louis, was building trust and making people feel comfortable. And when I was going through all your bios, because yes, I did stalk all of them, Alice, I saw you in an article just really referencing around the education, and that being a big thing. So, you know, we can talk about product partners, technology partners, channel partners, but there's also those like advocacy partners and brand awareness. I mean, I think Luno, you did an advert with Sia last week. I saw that come through. So just creating that advocacy, is that something that's at the forefront? And have you seen a big change in your consumer behavior based on those various partnerships?
I mean, I think it's slowly germinating. I don't think it's something, especially crypto is so nascent, right? Like I said, there's only 50-ish million users in Africa, right? And a lot of them, some of our highest, some of the largest volumes, for example, from an individual, you talk to him, he doesn't even know what a blockchain is, right? So I think it's something that you just have to, especially for our industry, to be honest, like prior to this, I was in payments as well. I was at Paystack, and I'd always been in a B2B type of business. So Yellow Card is the first time in a B2C, and I will never, ever want to have a marketing job in my life, knowing how much they slave and how they're like hammered with budget cuts and acquisition costs are so expensive, especially on the continent. It's just a really, really difficult job. And trying to like convince, you know, your board or your CEO or someone like me, listen, you know, you have to spend X amount. It's like, what's the LTV? Like, why is it so expensive? And in crypto particularly, right? Because it's so new, you have to spend a lot of time educating. And it's not like there's going to be like, you know, cliff at the end and then suddenly is mass adoption. But I think it's just the work that you have to do and just chug it to brand building or whatever it is. But for us, at least, I think it may not always make logical sense, but I think it's just something we have to do for the ecosystem, and all of us have to do it, right? So I took a picture when I was walking in, leaving Cape Town Airport, literally on your exit. Like Valor has covered the entire exit, and I sent it to some of my colleagues, and everyone was just saying different things. And one of them was like, I'm loving this because I don't have to spend that money, right? This is awareness. Like, I doubt how many people, like when I land, I want to get out, right? It's not like I'm just gonna stop and QR code. I don't know about you guys, but that's the way I was thinking about it. It's like, it's awareness, this matters, and they've helped all of us by doing that. So I think that's kind of the I mean, I'm throwing shots at you, but we all like, there's a huge market, we're amazing, and I think, we all just have to do the work.
Yeah, and I suppose, go for it. But just before you add, I think an interesting thing there is that you do the work to create the awareness. Everyone downloads and they know about crypto, and I can say this for myself, that I download and I'm like, now how do I use this thing? So there's almost like a two-stage that you have to start from the advocacy to the actual understanding of it.
Yeah, and sorry, just on that point, right, the point I made earlier on what Brian Armstrong said, the point is, if we want to reach critical adoption in crypto, we have to be embedded on traditional finance, right? There's no other way. Like, my dad or some of my friends will not want to get off their traditional banking app to a crypto app, right? Everyone wants a super app. I mean, PayPal is probably not the best example. That probably ages me. But now on PayPal, I have like my card, I have everything, and I can buy and sell crypto and get a card, right? Like, that's the holy grail of where we all want to be, and we're going there. But that's essentially, if we want to get from 350 million to, you know, 1 billion users, that's what we have to do.
I just wanted to add on the education piece, right? I mean, not to toot our own horn, but why is Stitch doing the Scale Summit? Right? It is, part of it is that education piece of it. If you look at the conversations today, just before this, I was sitting in an open banking workshop being run by Capitec, one of, you know, the top 5 banks in South Africa, and somebody in the room could easily have been sitting there asking, well, why are you giving the space to the banks, given what you guys do? But the reality is, this is part of the education process we need to do, is provide these kinds of forums to have those types of conversations where it isn't just, you do this, I do this. No, that's why we're here, and we're on the stage where there's 2 crypto players on the stage. There is a large financial institution in this space. There are other types of payment providers in this space. And if we aren't doing a good enough job of having those conversations and educating ourselves, how are we going to go out and do it to the end customer? So I think it's also part of our journey in this space that we have to collectively be educated before we can go out and do the second piece.
Yeah, for sure. And then another one for you is like you're often involved in the inception of a product. And in the topic of the panel, it's like an optimal payments experience, right? So you often don't actually see when you're given the brief, like, hey, we're going this direction. It's very difficult to see what that's going to look like. So when you're doing that entire process, like at what point do you see if it's going to be successful? When do you feel like your job's done and you're feeling like it's contributing to that?
Yeah, good question. So I guess the nice thing is that part of my job requires blue sky thinking and like big picture, open ideas, no constraints, right? So that part is great because you're not thinking about the details. But then because you're not in the details, you're always going to be worried about what the end product is going to look like, which is why we have an incredible product team that I get to hand over things to. But that also means that the partnership piece isn't just getting that partnership signed from a commercial, legal perspective. It is actually following through on the entire pieces of it. So I'm sure Clarissa will talk to this, right? Like, it isn't just done as soon as you sign the partnership and then you pass it on to the team. You're still involved in the, okay, what is this going to look like? You're looping in your branding and marketing teams of like, how does this look? You're talking with your design team. So there are thankfully people who are experts at Stitch, who then I get to work with and kind of see what does this look like as an end product. And then the other good thing about this kind of stuff is we're figuring it out. So we look at it as a very iterative process. I mean, not to throw like tech terms in there, right? But this is why you got to be agile. This is why you got to be iterative, because you have to take something out to market, see how it works, see what doesn't work, and then go back to the drawing table and be willing to have that kind of back and forth. So that's, I guess I'm actually kind of lucky in that way of like do the big blue sky stuff and then hand it over to the experts, but work really closely with them to make sure that that vision comes to life.
Cool. And I mean, Clarissa, you almost come from a different side. Your mandate is less from the product. You're very exposed to the support, the operations, the sales, and I mean, you know, customers can be very noisy. So let's say it's a reactive partnership, or at least like a capacity within your support team. How heavily involved are you then in that?
We stay super involved. Even if it's like the sales team talking to a merchant, we try to stay involved if it's about a partner's product. I mean, like, you know, partnerships are great and we can go on and on about them academically, but like when things go wrong, things go wrong. And I think that's a big measure of how strong your partnership is. Like, I know when we've had things, you know, systems fail or whatever, or miscommunication, or someone set the pricing to 15% instead of 1.5%, like, it's how reactive your partners can be. I think that's super important. So it's exciting. I mean, you know, you launch a product and you see it live in the world and it's exciting, but it's like, what next? And that's, yeah, sometimes partnerships don't work. I'm sure we've all been at companies or our current companies where partnerships have ended because strategy has changed, or SLAs are, you know, page 47 of the contract, but then they're not actually reached, and that can happen as well.
Yeah, and I think often in our industry, 1 minute you're collaborating and potentially next year, you know, adjacently competing, and how do you work well within that? Alice, talk to me a bit about Yellow Pay, because we had a chat around this, and I think this is an entirely partnerships panel, and I'd asked, you know, who had you partnered to do that, and if it was a partner-first strategy. You mentioned that Yellow Card have done that themselves first and only now looking to partner. Walk me through that. Was that always the plan? And with the partners that you're looking at now, why?
Yeah, actually, we're actively looking for partners, Tato, right, in South Africa to launch Yellow Pay. So Yellow Pay, essentially, if you're crypto, again, this is, native crypto users, right? And with Yellow Pay, we're slowly getting into working with crypto users to some extent who've downloaded the app but are not really trying to be crypto users. They're just trying to solve a problem, which is making payments cross-border. So indulge me here. So in prior with the traditional exchange, there's obviously so many use cases for crypto. Some people bet on it, some people trade, some people are trying to solve problems, they're trying to make payments, they're trying to move money. what have you. So we had a core group of our customers. They would, let's say, let me not take South Africa because the regulator will come for me. Kenyan shillings, you want to send Ugandan shillings. You want to send money to someone in Uganda. What you would do is you would load up your Kenyan shillings, buy USDT, send the USDT cross-border to a Yellow Card user in Uganda, then they sell it for Ugandan shillings. What Yellow Pay does is it just cuts down that 4-step process into a one click, where Yellow Card takes care of the crypto rails and you just see, okay, this person's getting X amount of Ugandan shillings. That's what Yellow Pay does. And now we want to take it, in South Africa, we kind of are a little bit conservative in the interpretation of the rules, where you have to have a license to move fiat cross-border, right? Money transfer license. We interpreted that in South Africa to include crypto, so you can't move crypto cross-border. So we haven't launched Yellow Pay here in South Africa. But essentially for us to do that, we need to partner with someone that can help us do that. And also, we'd be keen to partner with traditional money remittance companies, right? To take that again, to solve again the basic problem of I just need to send money and I don't want to line up at Western Union and pay 10%, or I don't have dollars, I'm in Nigeria, I can't get access to dollars, right? So yeah, that's Yellow Pay.
Okay, awesome. And Louis, when we had a chat, and also when you introduced yourself, you very humbly said it in 3 words, but I think your role is super expansive across from the onboarding. I know you've previously been head of payments. From a partnerships perspective in your day-to-day, what is super important? I know that you've got a big team and there's a lot going on, but are you, in terms of the facets of your role, where are you looking at partnerships to bolster the Luno offering at this stage?
I think it depends on the market in particular. So it depends on whether or not we're actually solving problems for customers. So I think you mentioned solving a problem. And I think the biggest thing is we have a lot of unsolved problems in each market. And that's where we'll look at a partner to help us solve that, or particularly on the distribution side. So if we're seeing that there's an untapped market in the US, for example, on cash or something like that, we'll say, okay, well, let's figure out how someone can enable a cash on-ramp for us. So it's very much, in terms of my role, it's very much just looking across the board and saying strategically, what are our big bets for the next 6 to 12 months? Where do we need to spend the most time on? What kind of distribution are we looking at? Where are our payments problems? Identity verification and fraud, I think there was a session earlier around fraud as well. I think that's also incredibly important at the moment, because quite a lot of our conversion, you look at this whole thing about this capturable market, you're there's hundreds of millions of people here. We find on our conversion journey as well, you just have a lot of bad players trying to exploit your platform, especially when you are new in a market. They really take your platform to the cleaners. So that's where we also have to get someone who can really help us with security and a safe journey there. And very much on those relationships, it's about being mutually beneficial as well. So I actually had a chat with one of our key partners earlier this week, and we were talking about renegotiating commercials, looking for maximums and minimums and stuff and tiers and stuff like that. And we were saying, okay, let's just keep an open conversation, especially in a new market. I can't really tell you what my volumes are going to look like. So just walk the journey with me. Let's figure this out together. And in crypto as well, we really don't know how customers are going to take this, how they're going to accept this, and how it's going to grow. If I'm talking about South African context where we've got a very solid base, or Malaysia where we're one of the real big players, there you can kind of say, okay, cool, we can give you 150,000 transactions in this period, or we can set caps or minimums, and then we'll take it from there. But it's very much, let's keep the relationships mutually beneficial, and let's try and figure out what works for us. So something else that's very important for us is redundancy as well. So we're looking at partnerships where we're okay, I need to make sure that my customer doesn't feel any downtime, any issues from our side. And I mean, we've unfortunately put customers through that before because we didn't have redundancy. And that's when things like exclusivity becomes very tricky, because I'm I can't even accept a 99.8% SLA from you, because that's not good enough, because I could have 100,000 customers failing their transactions when you are down for unplanned maintenance, or someone's attacked your servers or something. So that's redundancy is one of our big ones as well.
Yeah, I'm sure difficult then also the commercial negotiation in new markets. You don't have the volumes yet. You want the costs that you have, and obviously I'm sure you go back and forth. I think we've seen that a lot as well. But redundancy is important in that sense. Guys, thanks so much. I think we're all aligned in terms of we're all here to do what the customer wants. We all want to make sure that we're offering the right partners to enable us to do that, mitigate risk, and grow our market share. So thank you for joining me. I really appreciate it. And we'll open the floor to any questions.
Sorry, Hendrik here again. From a data sovereignty perspective, when you go into a new market, how do you handle the different country regulatory requirements from keeping data in a country when you've only got, if you're on Amazon or AWS or Google, you've only got it in SA, for instance? That's obviously a big challenge for you.
So you mean where our AWS data is hosted?
Where your client's data is hosted.
Client's data. So I'll make sure I understand this one correctly, but Luno our local entities don't interact with customers in other regions. So for example, Luno South Africa, we only interact with Luno SA customers. Luno Nigeria, only Nigerian customers. Our AWS data is hosted across multiple continents. We've got multiple redundancy servers. Am I understanding your question correctly, or?
Yeah, but I think you still have shared, right? AWS is hosted in Dublin. So
Yeah,
you'd be
yeah, yeah.
surprised. I don't know about, I think South Africa and maybe Nigeria even have a regulator around data security and data local hosting. At least in the countries where we operate, a lot of the regulators have not actually caught up to that.
Yeah.
In Nigeria, there's specific requirements. Now they're getting more into what data are you getting and who are you sharing it with. Only now, and I think just follow the big banks and telcos because they're the ones dealing with it. They're coming for those guys first before they'll come to us. So it's more of like just keeping track of, okay, what has MTN said about this? Because now the regulator in Nigeria, for example, is telling MTN you have to have it locally. It has to be in a local server in country. You can't move it to Dublin. Even the server in Cape Town, I don't even know if there's any data there. It's all going to Dublin anyway. So again, this is where the regulators are still kind of catching up, at least. I don't know if you've heard otherwise, but otherwise we're not compliant.
No, you are right.
How's it, guys? Jono from Kazang. Maybe this is coming from a place of ignorance, but you mentioned a virtual asset license in Botswana. What does that actually do for you guys? Is there any kind of that regulation here in South Africa? Not as far as I know. And like, does that enable or limit you guys as opposed to an area where there's no regulation?
Listen, I'm in finance. I always want to increase the valuation of Yellow Card. Licensing, customer lists, and making money. So it's an intangible, it's valuable, and it's a good signal to the market and to our customers, to be honest. And to banks, if I go into a conversation with a banker in Ghana and I say I have a license and here's what I did to demonstrate and to obtain that license, it's a very strong signal that it's compliance first and we care about it. Yeah. I don't know if others have differing opinions, but.
Cool, thanks. I believe we're on to the next session, but yeah, I appreciate you guys. Thanks for listening.